for part 4, and we're going to get into writings about art, and they help us give some insight into the work. A lot of times, artists paint things in a really intuitive way, and especially with the 20th century, you have these artists experimenting, expressing themselves, and perhaps they don't even know consciously why they're doing what they're doing. Who writes about art are art critics, and you're more probably familiar with a movie critic or a music critic. There's probably people you trust within that um, more than others. So certain music or movie critics you would look to see if they liked it, and then you want to see if you're going to go see that film. But it's true in art, where critics may not like a piece of work, but it's very popular with the public. That does happen. Something becomes popular even though it is not critically well received. That can happen. But art critics are really valuable in terms of some of the movements that are happening and changing, and they really determine a lot of the value of art, especially in the New York art world. And there's other art worlds as well, but they can be very influential in that way. Art historians, academics. Our book points out, and I kind of think this is a good analogy. We tend to look backward. We're studying what's already happened. Art historians don't usually cover contemporary work. Art critics are keeping up on the contemporary work, and again they became more important because there are so many different styles and different art movements going on. Okay, so art historians, academics, they're looking backward, they're studying things. Art historians usually have a PhD. I don't have a PhD, I have an MFA in studio art, but anybody who gets an MFA in studio art studies a lot of art history. So I have a broad knowledge, in depth, in a few certain things, and then some of my own personal explorations. But generally speaking, if you take a more advanced class, you're going to take it from somebody with a PhD. Okay, curators are people who are in galleries and museums, and they're the ones who decide what's going to go in the show. Sometimes they come up with a theme for the show, recently here in Albuquerque, there was one on borders, and so there were a lot of artworks that had to do with the U.S. Mexico border, visually or conceptually. A lot of different interesting works came up. Even some films were included in that particular show at 516 Arts. Artists who write about their work. I am somebody who actually does a lot of writing, not just for myself, but for other people. Oh, I don't know if I would say a lot, but I do off and on. But some artists do write about their work quite extensively and do understand what they're making. And also, artists will write about other artists' work, which is the case for Georgia O'Keeffe, who we're looking at here, 1926. And by the way, I'm in New Mexico, and she is a fantastically huge artist here. She did move to Santa Fe, early 20th century, or near Santa Fe, I should say, and influenced the culture here in a big way. Okay, so she says that these flowers, and there's a lot of flowers she paints, lilies and these irises and different things that she's painted. She says it's because she loves nature, and she does do landscape painting as well. Um, but a lot of other critics and artists have said that she's drawing, the female anatomy, specifically the vagina, and a lot of times she's negated this. She says that's not what it's about. Her sexuality too was something that was questioned. I'm not sure where she would fall in today's world where things were a lot more open, but she was married, but they lived apart, so it's a little hard to say. But her sensibility for these pieces was saying that they were nature. Other artists and feminists have included her in the feminine um, descriptions of this work, have included her in the feminist category because of the look of this work. And then other feminists don't care so much about the fact that they have a visual look to the female anatomy. They are more interested in the fact that she was a prominent artist in the early 20th century, and there were very few other women doing what she was doing and being recognized for it on the level she was recognized. She was always very, very famous from pretty much from the beginning. Okay, so our point here is that artists can add new interpretations of the same works. People are still writing about her today. She's still pertinent. She died quite a while ago. All right, so the next thing we're going to get into are the modernist philosophical positions. Now, it's funny because a lot of people think we're still in the modern era. We haven't been in the modern era since late 60s, early 70s. We are in the postmodern or contemporary era. We're even in the post colonialist or multi cultural era. We're in a lot of things now that are anti other things, and just it's multi pluralism is another one I've heard. But at any rate, the modernist philosophical position, we have formalist criticism, ideological criticism, psychoanalytic, which is still around, and structuralism. Okay, so there's four different modernist philosophical positions. The piece we're looking at here right now, Morris Louis, The Blue Veil in 1958-59, was a big deal in a sort of watershed moment. Clement Greenberg wrote a big, several essays, but one particular essay about this, how it was pure painting. And this is on page 97, by the way. And it's eliminated brushstrokes because this was kind of done. And there are a few other artists, Helen Frankenthaler is another one, where they're just kind of color washes. So maybe the color was thrown on like a sort of think of like a container, like a bucket of water or something like that, was thrown on like a big green bucket of watered down acrylic or um, painting would be thrown out, and then he'd kind of roll it around, right? And then it sort of consolidated down at the bottom. But these were washes. There's no brushes happening here. So the idea of recognizable imagery or symbolism or a narrative, those are distractions. So in the modernist context, and Jackson Pollock falls into this, um, Rauschenberg to a small extent, Rothko, de Kooning. There's a bunch of artists that fall into this where there's no story here, which is the narrative. There's no visuals telling us there's a person there, it's a landscape. It's none of those things. So this is thought to be the height of modernism, and that this was better than showing brushstrokes, showing the marks of the hand. And Pollock fits in this category too, where it's drip painting. There's no brushstrokes, there's no brush. It's pure emotion, it's pure painting. It's the height and the pinnacle of what painting could possibly be. Okay, come back to that.